Can you give a background about your disability and your experience navigating through it?
Yeah. So as a kid, I got like as a baby, I got an ear infection, kind of like how all babies get ear infections. Um, but then my ear infection was just like really, really bad. And you know how they usually put like tubes in the ears and that usually kind of fixes it. My tubes would just like immediately fall out and it was just like really bad. And then basically that just kind of led to a lot of like, definitely like as I was growing up, there was just difficulty hearing just because that usually ends up like messing with your eardrums and stuff. Um, and then I couldn't get like in deep water. I couldn't get like on rides and stuff like that. And in the moment, it wasn't like too big of a deal, but the doctors would always say like, like clearly she already has some hearing loss. And like as time progresses, it could either get like worse or it could get better. And I think for like a little bit, it was kind of okay. I was a kid, it wasn't that big of a deal. Once I entered school, and I also only knew Spanish when I entered school, and I was now going to school in English, that became like a much bigger problem. And my big thing has always been like conversational, like talking to somebody can just get a little bit difficult. Um, and if there's like a lot of noises in the same space, that can get really hard. So school clearly became like kind of a big problem. Um, and yeah, it was really just like some days were really good, like some months were really good, and sometimes I would just be like, Mom, I cannot hear anything when I'm at school. Um, I think that once I learned English, that definitely really helped because it's easier for me to like, because usually I have a thing where like I catch the end of words, but it's hard for me to like catch the beginning of words and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had like a small phase, not small, it was like 2 years of middle school where it was really bad. And that was just like a lot of doctor visits. You have to get your ears drained super often. And that's like not the funnest thing to explain to people. But yeah, so right now I feel like as I get older, it's just like hopefully it doesn't get worse. Hopefully it just kind of stays where it's at right now. But basically at the end of it, I have like moderate hearing loss in my left ear. So it could definitely be like much worse, right? But in old age, I'll probably have to look into getting something more like permanent help because it'll probably get worse as I get older just because old age and like pre-existing stuff.
You said that you signed a lot, or you took
Yeah.
ASL classes when you were little?
And like when I was really, really little, because they were like, oh, it might mess up how she starts talking and stuff. I went to like a speech pathologist for a really long time. But then in middle school, when I went through that phase where it was kind of getting really bad, my school offered ASL classes. So my mom was like, this should be good. Like, who knows? You know what I mean? Like, so I took them for like almost all of middle school.
And did you feel like it helped you in some way?
I met other people that also had like some type of like hearing disability. So that was kind of really cool. I think it was just for my mom, that was the main part. She was just like, if you ended up having to be in these communities for a longer time, like you should know stuff and you should meet people. So I think that was the main like thing that I got out of it. The like anybody in the school could take the classes and it was a whole bunch of middle schoolers. So I feel like sometimes the class wasn't taken super seriously. So I don't know if I could have probably learned more actual like signing if I'd been in like a more legit class, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
My mom was like, she had only been in the US like what, maybe like 5 or 6 years when I was born, which like isn't really that long of a time, you know what I mean? So I feel like, a lot of babies get ear infections. Like it's super common, but I definitely think a lot about how like I think mine getting worse just had to do with the fact that like my mom had no idea what to do. Like if a doctor told her something, she was like, I don't know what you're saying. And then I moved to Venezuela. So then my grandma was like, she was just a grandma, she was not too worried about like what I was and wasn't saying. And, at the end of the day, I was still a kid running around. So like, I feel like it all started becoming an issue when I got to school. And at that point they were like, yeah, no, your daughter's been having like a lot of damage to her ear because y'all haven't been doing much for the past like 5 years. So I always think about that, you know, like if people just, if it would have been easier in that moment, then maybe, I don't know. But it's fine. I feel like as I've gotten older, I've been like, I want to describe this better, like, because I always feel kind of weird because right, I don't have hearing aids. For the most part, I can manage. I've kind of like pieced together how to live my life, you know? So sometimes people, I almost like hesitate to tell people because like I'm gonna be fine. Like I'm gonna figure it out. Like I'm gonna figure out what you're saying. So like why do you need to know that I have to figure out what you're saying, you know? So and also because like it could be worse. I almost feel like, you know, like I don't know. It's weird. But yeah, I always try to like go online and I definitely like in middle school would like aggressively look things up and I'd be like, maybe this is what's happening, maybe this is what's happening. Um so so yeah.
Okay, what did you just say in that moment? Because I need to like.
Yeah. I just said that I would basically just look up things and
Okay.
maybe this is what's happening or maybe
Okay.
what's happening.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So like you adapt to the situation basically.
I definitely adapted to the situation.
What do you do in big groups
Little
though?
things. I would like obviously like my mom would make a letter at the beginning of every school year and tell the teachers like she needs to sit like right here and like stuff like that. And in college I record all of my lectures.